The Rundown with Carrie Saldo podcast is funded by Armbrook Village, offering research-based arts, music, fitness, and lifelong learning programs at their assisted living and Alzheimer's care community in Westfield. armbrookvillage.com.
This is The Rundown, your weekly news and review from Western Mass. I'm Carrie Saldo. It's Friday, September 26, 2025, and joining me with their take on this week's news from our region in studio, we have Dusty Christensen, investigations editor at the Shoestring, Jill Kaufman from NEPM's newsroom, and on the phone we have the CEO of the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the United States Senate, Adam Hinds. Good morning, everybody.
Hey.
Good morning.
Morning.
All right, coming up later in the show, you will hear us discuss a big investigation by the Republican newspaper about a project that reportedly was finished, but then as investigators dug into it, was not. We'll talk about the drought that we're seeing across Massachusetts and northern New England. But we are going to start today with the potential government shutdown. Adam Frenier of NEPM reporting here, quote, "If a spending deal isn't reached by the end of this month, the federal government could shut down on October 1st. The House passed a plan to keep the government functioning last week, but it didn't have enough votes in the Senate, and Democrats are pushing their own plan, which would expand and restore spending on health care, something President Donald Trump is against." Adam Hinds, you were in the state Senate in Massachusetts, I think, during 3 government shutdowns, 2019, 2020, 2021. Talk about a local impact that you witnessed as a result.
Yeah. Thanks, and thanks for having me. I think the reality is we do have maybe more federal workers in Massachusetts than you might think. The governor said that there are 46,000 people employed by the federal government here in Massachusetts, which is that's significant. And so that's the first and the biggest impact. I think the other is you start to think about how does this disrupt social safety net programs like food assistance and the like. We've heard some universities are starting to say to employees, look out for some of your research funding and the like. So the trickle effect is significant.
Yeah. In the event of a shutdown, federal agencies halt non-essential discretionary functions until new funding is law, but essential services continue to function. We're talking about Social Security and other mandatory spending programs. But the State House News Service reported late last night about a quarter of the state's $61 billion fiscal 2026 budget is tied to federal money. When Adam Frenier talked to Massachusetts U.S. Representative Richard Neal of Springfield, he talked about the Democrats' proposal. Here's part of what he said.
Our position is entirely reasonable, and this is what I would say to our Republican colleagues in the House of Representatives, including the Speaker. If you're so sure of your position, put the measure on the floor. 50 Republicans will vote for this measure because their constituents are about to lose health insurance as well.
Perhaps not surprising to hear Congressman Neal there to say the Democrats' position is entirely reasonable. Everyone thinks their position is entirely reasonable. But to his other points he's making, Dusty, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of reporting. I'm obviously not on Capitol Hill following the nitty gritty on the ground, but I've seen lots of reporting that, President Trump canceled a meeting with Democrats, as Congressman Neal is saying. He wants a bill to be brought to the floor so people can vote on it. You alluded to this earlier. We're seeing this more and more, it seems like, these government shutdowns as part of a negotiating tactic over our budgets at the federal level. We've already seen a lot of cuts from the Trump administration to social safety nets, to federal programs. It just feels like, I don't know, things are going down a new and not exactly exciting road.
Well, State House News pointed out also, we have seen a lot of government shutdowns in recent years. We're talking 2013, 2015, 2019, 2020, 2021, and of course, most recently in 2024. Jill Kaufman, NEPM, what's on your mind?
Well, just that it was before 2013 even. I'm thinking about myself in different newsrooms, not here, producing talk shows about this edge, this moment, and what's going to happen. And I'm thinking also about like the $500 million that the Department of Education just announced is going to issue to the development of charter schools. And so I'm thinking, the president, the federal government wants this money to get out there. So what, and maybe Adam and Harry, this is the question, is like, so with all the eagerness to develop what the Trump administration wants to develop, won't that push this into a more speedy,
because you would want that funding then in
yes,
play,
right? Now that is not Congress, that is the president's office. But how does that play out?
Adam, what are your thoughts?
Well, before I even answer that, one of the things that's in my mind in this is that the system of legislating is just broken. I mean, typically you would say, we need more votes from the other side. Let's talk to them to figure out what we're willing to give in order to get those votes. And that's just not even happening. It's just saying it's our way or the highway, and then we'll see who pays the political price for that. And so I do hesitate on some of the, getting too bogged down in, well, if this isn't funded right now, because eventually it will be. And it's just the crisis in the interim. But ultimately, what's in the budget, will kind of be backpaid and the like, I think, is what you're saying.
And one potentially different wrinkle here from the way I've been reading and watching the most recent, maybe over the past decade. We saw last night that President Trump's administration, the AP, reported that the White House is telling agencies to prepare for large-scale firings of federal workers if this government shuts down next week. Now, typically we see some of these folks are furloughed and then they return to their jobs once Congress approves the spending. So a different tact there. Anyone have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just think that the Trump administration has shown very clearly that they want to significantly cut the federal workforce and the programs that they provide for the American people, come after federal unions and unionized workers, and they've used many excuses to go after those people and to cut staffing, and so it's no surprise that perhaps they're going to use a government shutdown to do the same.
Well, negotiations on this in Congress are ongoing. An attempt to reach the budget deal before the October 1st deadline. Here's hoping everything gets worked out and then we can avoid this confusion and chaos. We shall see, and we will talk about it here on The Rundown. I'm going to move us on to a very local investigation. The headline in the Springfield Republican newspaper over the weekend: despite claims to the state, $2.5 million Paramount roof rehab overseen by Herberto Flores team never completed. This was a joint investigation by Jim Kinney and Greta Yoakum. Quoting here, atop the Paramount Theater, it's as though roofers broke for lunch one day and never came back. Though the job wasn't finished, every penny of a $2.5 million state allocation to rehab the property was paid out. A project leader told the state a leaking roof had been replaced, yet rain still pours through holes atop the historic Main Street building. Public money flowed into work that failed to leave the historic theater ready for its next act, this investigation by the Republican has found. The nonprofit that owned the building until last year, the New England Farm Workers Council, told the state in 2022 that work to replace the roof was complete, according to public records obtained by the Republican. Jill Kaufman, you have the actual physical paper here.
This is the Sunday paper, and I'm so floored by this photo, which I saw online. But looking at this, so I have in my reporting been in that building when there were, I think it was 2013. There was I'm sorry, I'm going to admit this. There was a red-headed Kennedy in office in Congress.
Joe Kennedy.
Thank you. It was the younger. And we were in that building. We were thinking about the future of the cultural development, the cultural economy here in Springfield, and nothing. So my thoughts are, though, that with the incredible reporting done by the Republican, that there are no comments from Herberto Flores or his attorneys. There are no comments really from. There's a comment from the state of Massachusetts, but where does the culpability lie? We know something happened. There were no checks on this. There was no inspection, I believe. So I'm kind of curious.
The city of Springfield, according to their reporting, didn't close out the building permit inspection, which is not all that uncommon.
Right,
but there were reports filed by Mr. Perez, according to the Republicans' reporting, with the state that the work was completed. And he, in fact, who is Mr. Flores' partner in this, told the Republican, to his knowledge, mission accomplished. They did the work. Obviously, the Republican found some different things. I want to say, though, for those wondering, like, where is this building in downtown Springfield? It's the building that is a block from the NEPM studios, but it's the corner of Main Street and Gridiron Streets, and it has the marquee of the Hippodrome. I think that is more visually notable for folks. And the building hasn't been used for years. It was kind of last used in the early 2000s at the nightclub, late 90s. I frequented the place a time or two and stuck to the floor. But it has largely been vacant, and there has been this huge push to redevelop it. And what Kinney and Yoakum pointed out is that the consequences of this are bigger than just the one project. Quote, the continued decay of the downtown landmark has ripple effects. The stalled Paramount project has dragged down efforts to rehabilitate the northern blocks of Main Street between Worthington Street and a railroad bridge. So it's not just this one project that's being impacted.
And it's not just one theater. I mean, the economies of certain cities have been counting on the redevelopment in North Adams, in Holyoke, of these beautiful proscenium theaters that once housed movies and live shows, as Carrie well remembers. But this is a very different part of town than down by MGM here in Springfield. There is a thriving bus and train station that has been redeveloped, but that corner, it's pretty. I would just say dank without being judgmental. It's pretty challenging.
In need of TLC.
People don't want to walk by, is my assessment on this. Without doing deep reporting, I walk by it quite often.
Adam Hinds, for you, though, listening to this, that, $2.5 million in state funding was spent. The roof still isn't finished. Is there a mechanism to claw back the money? Is there any recourse for this discrepancy?
Yeah, so the state agencies that administer grant programs, so I'm not sure who it was in this one, but economic development, there are a number of offices and agencies underneath that it can get assigned to. So they're the ones that are responsible for the day-to-day oversight of specific contracts. So you can check there. But then for clawbacks, there's a lot baked into the law in terms of non-compliance with grant terms or improper expenditures. And so there is a process in place to now go back and take the money back. That it can be utilized.
It was interesting reading about the contractors who actually were hired to go and do roof work. There was work completed on the roof, and not to get into the too nitty-gritty, but there was some explanation of they removed some concrete and some other things. So it seems like work did begin, and then COVID got in the way. But again, the report said the work was finished. For me, I'm thinking about, cost overruns with construction projects happen all the time. You start a project, you realize it's more extensive than you may perhaps thought. And I'm wondering if this is the case there, where the organizers here, Mr. Flores and Mr. Perez, saw that this was a bigger problem than they could afford and then didn't have the money to finish the job. But if that was the case, why didn't you say something as opposed to filing reports that said it was finished? Dusty, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I do know that, to Jill's point, the Victory Theater in Holyoke, or, this theater obviously down the street from us right now, it is hard to rehab these places. It seems like more and more money needs to be sunk into them as time passes. These are long-term projects, but to your point, why not say that on the forums? I do just want to give a shout out to the Republican for really digging deep into this story. They're a publication that is really valuing investigative reporting, which seems to be disappearing in all corners of our country. But here in Western Mass, we've got outlets like NEPM and Republican actually digging into these things. I mean, they flew a drone over the building to look at the roof. And, we always say as journalists, it's not our job to quote one person saying it is raining, one person to say it isn't. It's our job to walk out the door and see. And in this case, they flew the drone up and saw. So Greta Yoakum, Jim Kinney, there's other great investigative reporters there like Stephanie Berry, Larry Parnas, the executive editor. All credit to them for digging into this work.
And Jill, you alluded to this. We didn't hear from Mr. Flores in the story, but William Bennett, an attorney for Mr. Flores who has worked for the Farm Workers Council, said that the council was forced to give up on the Paramount. Quote, they just couldn't afford to maintain it anymore, Bennett said. It just was draining all their resources. So we did have some comment from them.
Absolutely. You're right. I'm sorry. And to correct that, but I also want to point out that this is not the only challenge that the New England Farmers Council has had. They had to sell multiple buildings including
this
one. So it's part of the building is one thing, and then there is the issue of how money was spent and how businesses were managed, or how this council was managed.
Well, because there was allegations of $1.8 million of misuse of federal funds, misappropriation of low-income heating assistance, that the Farm Workers Council, according to their attorney in this report, has since paid back, in part from the sale of Paramount and some other downtown buildings. But this investigation by the Republican found that this use of these funds perhaps don't match up with what the documents say. All right, we're going to head to a break. Our rundown panel will be here when we come back. We're going to talk about free speech, up for debate, and drawing protests in Western Mass, plus the current drought and its impact on farmers in the 413. If you have thoughts, email the rundown at nepm.org. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Rundown. I am Carrie Saldo, joined in studio here by journalist Dusty Christensen and Jill Kaufman, and on the phone by the CEO of the Kennedy Institute for the U.S. Senate, Adam Hinds. Welcome back, everyone. A headline from Mass Live: significant drought declared in 10 Massachusetts counties. And when you look at the map from the state office of the Massachusetts Office of Executive Environmental Affairs, earlier this month, it shows a significant drought. There are 5 possible drought levels. We are at the 3rd highest by that significant drought delineation. Mass Live's Susanna Sudborough reporting, quote, although the spring and early summer months brought much needed rain, less than normal precipitation over the last 3 months has quickly moved many regions of the state back into a significant drought. The Environmental Affairs Department said August was a particularly dry month for Massachusetts, and 3-month precipitation deficits remain widespread, with much of the state receiving 40 to 80% of normal rainfall. It might not feel like it because it rained a lot yesterday around the Springfield area, but this is where we're at. Khalees Smith and Monty Belmonte of NEPM's The Fabulous 413 spoke with Stephen Toronto of the Community Involved in Sustaining Agriculture, or CISA as it's more commonly known, and they talked about the drought, and he brought up this concept of a winter drought, which is also complicating this.
We didn't really have precipitation between October and April of last year, very little snowfall. So it's really becoming a problem for farmers. And here in New England, a lot of farmers have not invested in irrigation equipment. So it's a challenge when we get these dry periods.
The fact that farmers don't have that irrigation equipment, again, it's just the importance of not assuming, right? I think of farming and I think of irrigation, but Mother Nature takes care of much of that for us here in Massachusetts. Jill, I know you've reported a lot on the other end of this, the flooding we've seen.
Both.
Okay.
I mean, like that is what I've been thinking about this year, is that every other year I'm reporting on one or the other, severe drought or severe flooding, as we all have been experiencing as well in this region. What I'm heartened by is that there are people around the table, farmers and others, talking about some solutions, but really they are adaptations to how traditional farming and even new small farming has been underway. Things to relieve heat stress for animals, how weeding does or doesn't take place and allows for crops, spring crops, fruit buds being, frozen, flower buds being frozen so fruits don't come out. How are farmers adapting? There's a lot of conversation going on, but still, every year there's a deep crisis and deepening crisis as the weather is less and less predictable.
And the Boston Globe had a piece about how, looking at broader across northern New England, so we're talking about, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and they're talking about how they're reckoning with this whipsaw weather that, Jill, you just referenced. And the article goes on to say, which was reported by Paul Hinds, blueberry crops have been decimated, potato yields are down, corn stalks are stunted, haying operations have been halted, and livestock are depleting water supplies. Dusty, this just makes me think about the interconnected nature of all of this, because we take food from those states and bring it here to Massachusetts.
That's right. I think that it's important to remember that when we're talking about climate change, and this is very much driven by climate change, it is something that impacts all of us, whether it is the wildfires happening because of drought in the northwest corner of Canada that's sending wildfire smoke our way like it did this summer. New England is expected to get more precipitation on balance due to climate change, but at the same time, also in the in-between periods, is expected to have more drought. It's what climate scientists refer to as climate whiplash. The warmer atmosphere, as I understood from speaking to climate scientists earlier this year about this, obviously can hold more water and release more water, but it's also more thirsty, to use an analogy. It can draw more water from the soil through evaporation from plants through what's known as transpiration, and those two processes, evapotranspiration, is what is causing these in-between drought periods. That increases the risk of wildfire. People may remember that we had a historically bad fire season last fall, and I'm worried that we're headed that way again.
Well, for people who are listening to us, and Adam Hinds, I'm going to bring you in just a second, thinking like this is all very frustrating and too big for me to handle. There are like little small bites that we can be taking. The State Energy and Environmental Affairs Secretary, Rebecca Tepper, pointed out today that, we're urging the public to remain, not today rather, but this week, to remain vigilant during this time and adhere to local water restrictions, practice water conservation. Things like that are small ways that we can help during this time. Adam Hinds, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, it's something that it was front of mind, and we always found the mechanism, whether a supplemental budget or otherwise, to support farmers. But it just speaks to the need. Okay, it's time for moving to larger investments into adaptations. I like the ideas we're hearing today, but it's time for an official program to do that, because swinging back and forth and after the fact crisis management just isn't working.
Jill Kaufman, one more thought.
I just want to add one more thing, and this is about federal emergency money. So FEMA money is not going to be as at the ready. It was always a challenge for farmers to be able to collect. It really depended on the status of the emergency. But as we understand it from the Trump administration, that is going to be less and less. So in the immediate approach to helping farmers rebuild when something catastrophic happens because of weather, we know that that's not going to be as readily available. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to move us on to talk about something that the Berkshire Eagle discussed this week, an editorial on September 20th under the headline, "We must stand up for freedom of expression." Quoting here, "This is no time to mince words. Freedom of speech is under direct attack from the country's most powerful leaders. Anyone who cares about the most exceptional of American attributes should be alarmed when the government goes after comedians for their thought crime of controversial jokes." Now, the editorial is, of course, referring to television host Jimmy Kimmel, who was suspended by ABC, the parent company of Disney, last week over remarks that Kimmel made during his show about the man accused of fatally shooting conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The suspension followed criticism by the Federal Communications Commission Chairman Brendan Carr and others, including President Trump. Kimmel returned to the air on Tuesday, and now here we are. There's a national debate and discussion about free speech. Adam Hinds, I think Senator Kennedy had some things to say about what he felt about free speech there at the Institute. What's been on your mind as this has unfolded?
Well, it's become an issue that's bipartisan in nature. Ted Cruz coming out and saying that this is a dangerous step to take, and so that shows you how relevant it is for the political discourse. I think what's maybe just as interesting is we have breaking news from last night about an indictment of former FBI Director James Comey. And and I'm down here in D.C. right now, and I would say that's kind of there's a lot of concern about that as well, in terms of, is it a prosecution that was directed from the president and not the Justice Department? And so it just feels like there's these last 2 weeks, everything's in overdrive.
And clearly we're talking about these moves that have been made under a Republican administration. But, you know, left-leaning politics isn't immune to censorship attempts. I think about the cancel culture that we've heard and talked about so much in recent years. I think that could certainly fall under that label. I went looking for some statistics here and found Pew Research in April surveyed people about free expression in 35 different countries, including the United States. In the U.S., 67% of those surveyed said that media can report the news without state or government censorship. 62% said that they can say what they want without state or government censorship or fear of it. And 60% of people said that they can use the internet without state or government censorship. So, Dusty, when I look at those numbers, we've got 30 to 40% of people surveyed back in April saying that whether it's journalists bumping up against censorship or themselves, it's something they're seeing happening here in the U.S. I thought that those numbers would have been where people didn't feel censored would have been much higher. What about you?
Yeah, I feel the same. And we're seeing it from the Trump administration now. I mean, just the other day on a news broadcast, Trump made the comment quite literally that he thinks writing negative stories about him should be illegal. The Pentagon just came out with a new policy that says that journalists cannot report news unless it's pre-approved by the Pentagon. Obviously, there's going to be nothing critical coming out of pre-approved news from the Pentagon.
I think we're going to see a lot of organizations pushing back on that.
I would certainly hope so. And I really hope that journalists now are coming together in solidarity to stand up for our own free speech and that of others, because our First Amendment rights are intricately connected with, everyone from comedians to regular people as well. I'd be remiss I didn't point out that our government has also been supporting the Israeli government as it targets journalists in Palestine right now. That is what the Committee to Protect Journalists has called the deadliest and most deliberate effort to kill and silence journalists that it's seen in its history. So a troubling time for the First Amendment here and journalism abroad as well.
Jill, Karen Brown, our colleague here at NEPM, covered a protest in West Springfield this week, and among the messages that they were talking about as they were lining the road to the Big E, they're talking about defending free speech and anti-authoritarianism. Did anything stand out to you in Karen's reporting, or any thoughts on what you're hearing here?
Sure. I mean, I think we are seeing more and more of these kinds of protests, and the bridge protests on 91. You'll see that people are not backing down. I think, though, this trickles into campus. I'm thinking about universities, and I'm thinking about the last, 2024, what happened. And I'm thinking about how quiet it is on universities now. What is happening in classrooms between students being able to express their opinions. And, Dusty teaches at UMass.
I was going to say, Dusty, thoughts on that?
You've been teaching much, you see this much more than I do, but it's been quiet in other places where it's been verbose in the public.
Yeah, I've talked to activists on campus who say that their spaces feel very chilled, whether it's because of the, crackdown on pro-Palestine protests that UMass made on campus, or just more broadly, this environment. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel obviously is a rich comedian and somebody with a big national profile, but those kinds of things, when you see them, they have a ripple effect and a chilling effect on free speech all the way down the chain to us journalists at smaller publications in places like Western Mass, and to students, to activists, to people wanting to speak their mind.
Well, what I'm thinking about here is that, our public discourse has been so toxically polarized, and it seems like it's increasing. And my hope for this show is that it's a place for people to hear information, give yourself the time and space to consider it and think and feel and figure out how you are truly feeling about this information. The Eagles landed, we're going to end on a quote from the Eagle. Whether you agree with a comedian's point of view or a commentator's political slant, we would hope our fellow Americans agree it is fundamentally un-American for the government to bully anyone for exercising their right to free expression. The founders certainly thought so. That's why they put the First Amendment first. All right, I'm going to move us on to our scoop, praise, and prediction part of the program, where we make a prediction about the news, dish on a story that we're working on, or perhaps heap some praise on something that has currently caught your attention. Dusty Christensen, scoop, phrase, prediction? What's on your mind today?
This one isn't quite fully public yet, so I'll be a little...
So a little bit of a scoop is what you're saying.
a little bit of a scoop. The NEPM and the Republican are up for a big award from the New England Newspaper Publishers Association later today. That's a joint investigation that I did with Greta Yoakum at the Republican. And I think there's going to be an announcement on that later today. So we've got our fingers crossed.
Well, fingers crossed, exactly. And good luck. That's fantastic. Adam Hinds, how about for you? Maybe not a scoop. Maybe you're not working on a deep investigation there at the Kennedy Institute, but what's on your mind?
Well, speaking of bipartisan dialogue, we have Vice President Mike Pence and Meghan McCain will be moderating a conversation at the Institute next week, October 1st at noon, specifically to talk about governing in a polarized era and populism versus conservatism and the future of the Republican Party. And so we're always trying to model talking across the aisle and doing it next week.
And is this something that people can sign up for online, or is it an in-person event only?
Both. You can sign up go to our website, emkinstitute.org, and you can sign up there whether you want to go in person or watch remotely.
Excellent. Jill Kaufman, how about for you?
Not a scoop, but a report I'm working on about teaching civics in high school, and about I predict that at least in Massachusetts, these students are going to keep learning and pushing back and holding on to what true history is of the United States.
I look forward to hearing all about that. All right, our rundown anthem is by the Love Crumbs. Our director is Tony Dunn. Our board op today is Bart Rankin. And our engineers are Phil Bishop, Chuck Dubé, and Kara Foster. Production support and digital by Ayu Suryawan. I'm Carrie Saldo. You've been listening to The Rundown here on 88.5 NEPM.